If you gave me a real-world business problem and asked me to automate it, this is how I would approach it. Not by starting with the tool, not by immediately opening Zapier, Make, ChatGPT, or any other platform. I would start with the problem. Because AI automation is not really about tools. It is about understanding how work gets done, finding where the friction is, and building a system that makes that process faster, cleaner, and more reliable. So in this video, I want to walk through a realistic example of how I think about AI automation. The example I'm going to use is simple. A local service business is missing leads because they are not responding fast enough. This could be an HVAC company, a plumber, a cleaning business, a landscaping company, a roofing company, any business where people reach out asking for service. The problem is not that they do not have customers. The problem is that customers are reaching out, and the business is not responding quickly enough. And in a lot of service businesses, speed matters. If a customer fills out a form, sends an email, or leaves a message, they usually do not wait forever. They contact the next company. So the business might not even realize how much money they are losing. That is the problem I would want to solve. Now, before I automate anything, I would map the current process. Because you cannot improve a process you do not understand. So I would ask, how does a lead come in? Where does that information go? Who sees it? How fast does someone respond? What happens if no one responds? Is the lead stored anywhere? Is there a follow-up process? Those questions matter because they show the real workflow. And the workflow is what we are actually automating. Let's say the current process looks like this. A customer visits the website. They fill out a contact form. That form sends an email to the business owner. The owner checks it when they have time. Maybe they reply right away. Maybe they forget. Maybe the email gets buried. And maybe the customer already booked with someone else. That is a broken process. Not because the owner is lazy, not because the business is bad, but because the system depends too much on manual attention. And that is exactly where automation can help. The next step is to break the problem into inputs, process, and outputs. This is one of the simplest ways to think about automation. The input is the thing that starts the workflow. In this case, the input is the customer inquiry. That could be a form submission, an email, a text message, or a voicemail transcription. The process is what happens after that information comes in. The system needs to read the inquiry, understand what the customer needs, collect missing information, and decide what should happen next. The output is the result. That could be an instant response to the customer, a notification to the business owner, a new row in a spreadsheet, a task in a CRM, or a scheduled appointment. Once you can explain the input, the process, and the output, you are already thinking like an automation specialist. Now let's design a simple version of this system. First, we need a place for the customer to submit their information. That could be an existing website form. Or if the business does not have one, we could create a simple landing page. This is where a tool like Lovable could be useful. Lovable can help create a simple front end quickly. A landing page, a form, a clear call to action. Something like request a quote, book a service call, get help today. That page becomes the entry point into the automation. Now, once the customer submits the form, the next thing we need is the automation layer. This is where a tool like Zapier or Make could come in. Zapier would be a good choice if the workflow is simple. For example, new form submission comes in. Send email to the customer. Send notification to the business. Add the lead to Google Sheets. That is simple and useful. Make would be better if the workflow needs more logic. For example, if the customer says the job is urgent, send a priority alert. If the customer is asking for a quote, send a different follow-up. If the customer is outside the service area, send a polite response explaining that. That is where Make becomes powerful, because it lets you create branches, filters, and more advanced logic. Now, where does AI come in? This is the important part. AI should not be added just because it sounds cool. AI should be used where it actually improves the process. In this example, AI could read the customer's message and classify it. For example, the message might say, My furnace stopped working and I need someone today. AI could identify that as urgent. Or the message might say, I'm looking for a quote for landscaping this spring. AI could identify that as a standard sales lead. Or the message might say, do you service my area? AI could recognize that the customer needs location confirmation. That is where AI becomes useful. It helps interpret messy human language. Because customers do not always fill things out perfectly. They do not always use the exact words you expect. AI can help understand the intent behind the message. So now the workflow could look like this. A customer submits a form. The automation captures the lead. AI analyzes the message. The lead is categorized. The customer receives an instant response. The business owner gets notified. And the lead is stored for follow-up. That is a much better system. The business no longer depends on someone checking email at the perfect time. The customer gets a response immediately. The business has a record of the lead, and the owner knows what needs attention. Now, let's make this more realistic. Let's say the business owner does not want fully automated booking yet. That is totally fine. A good automation does not have to do everything on day one. The first version could simply respond and collect information. For example, thanks for reaching out. We received your request and can help. Please reply with your address, preferred time, and a brief description of the issue. That alone is valuable. Because the customer feels heard, the conversation continues, and the business has more information before they call back. Later, the system could be improved. Maybe it connects to a calendar. Maybe it checks availability. Maybe it books appointments automatically. Maybe it sends reminders. Maybe it follows up after the job and asks for a review. But you do not need all of that at the beginning. This is something I think is very important. Start simple. Build the first version. Test it. Then improve it. That is how real automation systems are built. Not by trying to create the perfect system immediately. Now, let's talk about the tools I might use. For the front end, I could use Lovable if I needed to quickly build a landing page or form experience. If the business already has a website form, I might not need Lovable at all. For the automation layer, I could use Zapier if the workflow is simple and straightforward. If it needs branching and more control, I would use Make. If I needed custom logic that the automation tools could not handle easily, I might use Replit. For example, maybe I need a small custom script to clean up data, format phone numbers, connect to an API, or create a more advanced responder. Replite gives more flexibility. For the AI layer, I could use ChatGPT or another AI model to classify the inquiry, summarize the message, or generate a response. And for storage, I could use Google Sheets, Airtable, or a CRM depending on the business. The specific tools can change, but the thinking stays the same. Input, process, output, trigger, action, logic, follow-up. That is the framework. Now here is where people sometimes get this wrong. They start with the tool. They say, I want to build something in Zapier, or I want to use AI, but that is backwards. The better question is, what problem are we solving? Once you know the problem, the tools become easier to choose. If the problem is slow response time, then the solution needs to focus on speed. If the problem is lost information, then the solution needs to focus on capturing and storing data. If the problem is inconsistent follow-up, then the solution needs automated reminders and messages. That is how you choose the right automation. Now let's talk about what success would look like. A good automation should not just exist. It should improve something. So for this example, I would measure how fast does the customer get a response? How many leads are captured? How many leads get followed up with? How many appointments are booked? How many leads were previously missed? Those are the numbers that matter. Because automation is not just about building a cool workflow. It is about improving the business. If the business responds faster, captures more leads, and books more jobs, then the automation is doing its job. Now let's talk about risk. Because every automation has risk. What if the AI sends the wrong message? What if it misunderstands the customer? What if the system breaks? What if the business owner does not trust it? Those are real concerns. So I would not build this as a fully autonomous system right away. I would build it with safeguards. For example, AI can draft the response, but the business owner approves it. Or the system can send a basic safe response but not make promises. Or urgent leads can be flagged for human review. That is how you build trust into the automation. You do not just automate everything blindly. You decide which parts should be automatic and which parts still need a human. That is a big part of being good at AI automation. Knowing where automation helps and where human judgment still matters. Now, if I were explaining this in an interview, I would say something like this. I start by understanding the business problem. Then I map the current process. Then I identify the trigger, the data, and the desired outcome. After that, I choose tools based on the complexity of the workflow. Then I build a simple version, test it, measure results, and improve it. That is the approach. And that is what I want this channel to show, Not just tools, not just hype, but how AI and automation can be applied to real business problems. Because that is where the value is. A business does not care if you used the trendiest tool. They care if you help them save time, reduce errors, respond faster, or make better decisions. So if you are learning AI automation, this is the mindset I would recommend. Do not just ask, what tool should I learn? Ask, what problem can I solve? Then learn the tools that help solve that problem. That is how you start becoming useful. That is how you build real skills. And that is how you move from learning about automation to actually applying it. If you want to see more real-world AI automation breakdowns like this, make sure you follow the channel. I post new videos every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday focused on practical, beginner-friendly AI and automation. And I'll see you in the next video.